So we are now recording, and I'm going to take us live to Facebook, and we're going to talk about how our worlds are being affected by this pandemic. We're going live to my at Phil Circle Music page, and I will share it from there and tag y'all and stuff. Um, Chris, do you want me to when I tag people, you want me to tag Flatts and Sharpe?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, they should know that you're an active member of the community in more ways than one, I think, right? So,
How are you doing this, Phil? How is this going live on Facebook?
so there's a setting way down in the advanced settings of Zoom that
Huh.
allows you to go live Facebook, live YouTube, and live Facebook Business. And then it links up to whatever your pages happen to be on there.
Well, how about that?
Mary, do you want to go? You go by Mary Reynard Liss? Is that the preferred?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's where most of my communications take place. I have a Mary Reynard page, but I woefully neglect it.
All right. So this is the special stay at home podcast today. I did the here we go, we're going live. I did the Across the Pond cast with Dave Arcari from Glasgow, Scotland.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, last week. He's a fun guy, and we should be live.
Cool. Waiting for the notification.
Yeah.
It says it's live to me.
Oh yeah, on the screen.
All right, folks. We are live on the Book of Faces. I am delighted to be here doing this special podcast of life, music, and the pursuit of answers. So it's a year since I launched this podcast, sort of randomly from Los Angeles. When I found myself talking for an hour to our Airbnb host when I was there recording my album Baritones last March. While I was there, my wife Megan and I got together with our friend Mary Reynard Liss, and I ended up recording her for a podcast, and the now defunct Corky's, the
Yes.
restaurant that got shut down and replaced with a Chick-fil-A. There's just something wrong
Oh
about that.
no,
Oh.
I didn't know that. No, Corky's was so great. That
And
makes me.
it had so much history too.
Yes.
It was used in a lot of movies and things, and so we did a podcast there with Mary and I. We did a podcast with my Airbnb host, who turned out to be a two-time Grammy nominated drummer, and we did a podcast with my good friend Ted Wolfers, who's out there, and and it went from there. So episode number 4 was Mary Reynard Liss, who, if you're watching on the Book of Faces, or the video is right below me on the Brady Bunch gallery view that we have here. To my left on is my wife Megan Corse, who is in episode number 13. We're not superstitious, fortunately. And then below Megan is Chris Bell, the owner of Flatts Sharpe Music, somebody I had the great pleasure of working with, teaching at her 2 locations in Chicago. And she was on episode number 8, and I'm just excited that I remember what number they all were, because I looked it up like early this morning. I'm not sure the coffee had kicked in. So let's go around the room, so to speak. And thank you all for taking the time to do this today. It's you know, it's this weird misconception that people have, especially if you're in the arts. I've noticed um, that, oh, you must have more time to do stuff now that you can't go anywhere, and it's actually a mad dash to try and accomplish things. I think, Megan, you've done more auditions in the last week than I can recall you ever doing, because
Wow.
everybody's
Everyone's just, yeah, jumping right online. It's been crazy. A lot of big casting offices are doing open calls because they want to see new faces because they're bored, I guess. I don't know. So, yeah, I've probably done 10 auditions in the last week.
Wow.
and that's the job of an actor when they're not in an actual, you know, gig, you know, on stage or behind, you know, in front of the camera or what have you. And Chris, you know, one of my first thoughts when I knew I had to shut down my teaching studio, one of my next thoughts was, I wonder how Chris is doing, because not only do I know that's your livelihood, but I know how much you care about the work that you're doing. Flatts Sharpe is the second biggest private lesson facility in Chicago after the Old Town School of Folk Music, and that's quite a mantle to carry. And I know you care about the people that you're teaching, and you care about the people that are doing the teaching. So I was like, wow, I hope they're not totally screwed. And I found out you're not. You're working harder than ever.
True story. True story.
And so you've got all the teachers doing Zoom lessons. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, we have 22 teachers teaching from home, over 500 students. And we did not miss one lesson. We mobilized in 72 hours, and and it was a we. My two managers at the store, Ashley and Justin, um, they're part superhero. They were absolutely amazing. They sprang to action, and the teachers rolled with it, and it's been really successful so far. So
And
we're stable.
that's great. That's really just that's amazing to me because one of the biggest fears in Chicago with the music community has been the amount of sudden unemployment. I talked to one guy who had 28 gigs canceled. You know,
Yeah.
that's you know a lot of pay that there's not a replacement for. But when I was meeting with we did a meeting just like this on Zoom. Uh, we with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, the year of Chicago music is this year, 2020. Well, it's going to be an unforgettable year in a lot of ways, and that's probably not going to be one of them. Uh,
Right.
and the first meeting that we had, as soon as everything was ordered that we shelter in place, everybody was ordered that we shelter in place. The only concern that the heads of our committee had, and that the commissioner and the deputy commissioner had for the city of Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs was, what do we do about all the musicians that are suddenly out of work? So it was the same thing. It was just an immediate mobilization. You know, yeah, whatever. We've canceled all our events through July. There'll be no Blues Fest for the first time ever. You know, but that doesn't matter. What do we do about all the musicians? So their entire page is now dedicated to resources. I spent 2 days getting through the page, even though it was
Wow.
half the stuff I didn't qualify for, because they've got stuff for everybody in the performing arts up there. So it's that kind of mobilization that oftentimes will open up, I think, a whole new line of resources and a whole new line of skills that we didn't
Phil,
have.
what was the website that you found all those resources on?
So it's the City of Chicago. I don't know the exact website, but it's probably
Okay.
cityofchicago.gov/dcase.
Oh, the DKs,
Right.
right. Okay, right.
Cultural Affairs, special events. You can
Awesome.
you can Google it up, and they if you can't find the immediate page, there's a big old banner at the top of everything. I found, and through that I found Billboard Magazine is the next one I'm going through. Billboard Magazine has turned their entire website into what can we do to help. And again, there's plenty of stuff one might not qualify for, but Megan and I found one immediately, and we've already got the checks.
Wow. All right, you guys. Awesome.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't huge money, but it was Chicago playwright, and there was a bike ride canceled because of all this, and I guess they put the money toward, if you lost a gig, send us an email, say you lost a gig, we'll send you a check, and they meant
Wow.
it,
Wow.
Now, on to Mary. Um, how's it going out there in Los Angeles?
Well, we've been shelter in place for 3 weeks now. Everybody is very cooperative, because filmmaking, well, as you all know, theater in general is interdependent. So, uh, when you're staying at home, there really aren't any opportunities to do the work that you're used to. I am also a writer, so I've been spending my time when I'm not glued to all the news programs, following what's going on. I've been spending my time working on. I've got several screenplays and a couple of treatments that I was hoping to be pitching by now, but when this is all over, this gives me a chance to polish them and rethink some sections of them, things like that. So I've been working on that and just really missing the the fun. It's like you take it for granted. The artistic fun that we have working together and working off of each other, and being amazed at the creativity of one another. Growing that way when you work with other actors and other artists in general. But I'm hanging in there, and it seems like there's light at the end of the tunnel now. I've been hearing, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
And I'm amazed. That's so great that you and Megan, that there are people out there who are helping musicians and people who are out of work. That's wonderful. That I applaud people for doing that.
Yeah, Chicago's really jumped on it, and Illinois in general. There's another fund called the freearts.org/artist relief, and they do a lottery of grants for artists that have applied. And there's so many. I shared so many of these in the last week, because Chicago's just like help. The community is so great here. Everyone's sharing all the resources they have. The Actors Fund is the other big one. The Actors Fund is a national organization, and they have a list of all the COVID-19 resources that actors and theater people can apply for, on-camera people, entertainment workers as well, all the crew. So, yeah.
do we think we've learned anything? So there's some questions I wanted to pose. We know that, first of all, this is not entirely unprecedented. There have been other pandemics. Pandemic doesn't mean that everybody dies from it. We have pandemics of the flu and the cold every year, where there's some specific cold virus getting around on the through United Airlines and stuff around the planet. But this is a deadly pandemic, and then we had a deadly pandemic in 1918 that they called the Spanish flu, and I want to just correct to the entire world that it started in Haskell, Kansas. They called it the Spanish flu because Spain at the time was neutral during World War One. So they were the only ones reporting deaths as a result, because these other countries didn't want to appear weak, even though 25% of their population was dying from an influenza pandemic. So then it got called the Spanish flu. So that was just another way we got to blame somebody else for our problems. But it started in Haskell, Kansas, at a Navy base, an Army base, and spread around from there. Did we learn anything from that? My feeling is yes, because we've immediately sheltered in place. And in fact, there was at that time 2 cities in particular that were that did opposite things about their breakout of the Haskell, Kansas flu. And that was St. Louis decided in the 1918 pandemic to shelter in place, like we're doing all over the country now, and had a lot fewer deaths. Philadelphia, on the other hand, and this is nothing against Philadelphia, it's just what happened then, decided to go ahead with their parade to send the troops off to win World War One, and as a result, they had higher than normal deaths. So I feel like maybe we learned from that. A lot of people didn't even know that that pandemic existed. We're going to be following this with a recession. There's no two ways about it. Moody's released a report today that our job loss of 29% is higher than it was at the height of the Great Depression. It's not going to sustain like that, but it's going to have an effect. It's pretty much a given that worldwide we're going to go into a recession. Whether it's as big as the financial crisis of 2008, I don't know. I'm only the son of an economist, but I would, it's pretty much a given we're going to go into a recession. What have we learned? Because any of us have been through recessions. Megan and I started dating, by the way, 12 years ago, like in a couple weeks, and right as that recession kicked in, and it took about a year or two for it to become the Great Recession. I also remember as a young man, preteen, sort of the gas crisis of the 70s. I was raised by a man who lived through the Great Depression and never felt like he had enough money, even though there was plenty of it going around the house. You see the effects of these things on people's psyche. Let's see, Chris, you and I were around the same age. We grew up, through high school and college age, through like the Cold War, and watching the end of the Cold War and the very real fears of that and such. We've all seen different aspects of the crises that happen in our society. What do you think? Have we learned anything yet?
Well, I'm angry that this is my second recession I have to go through, where some people got to go be in business their whole life and they didn't have a recession, and now I get my second one in business. I feel a little more prepared than perhaps someone else who didn't go through 2008. I did an interview earlier today, and we didn't feel the effect. So we're not entering a recession. Just so you know, we are technically 100% by definition in a recession right now. We're there. And same thing with the housing crash in 2008. We didn't feel it until 2009, because what's happened is all the construction projects are funded right now. Those guys are still working. Those people are still working. Expansions of departments at universities, it's funded. Those people are working. But what's happened is right now, everything has stopped. There is no planning. There will be no projects in 9 months from now. There will be no future growth happening in 9 months from now, because you need to plan for that, right? So where I would think actually the majority of us, thinking about it, are stable right now, that's going to start to fall to the wayside, in my opinion. And it's how it works. It takes about 9 months to really feel the effects. And remember, that was one industry. That was the housing industry that failed.
Mm-hmm.
This is all the industries failing. And by all projections, we'll be in a depression in about 9 months from now. And that's my fear. That's the anxiety that's in my chest. Not right now. I'm stable. But in 9 months from now, that's my anxiety.
So do you feel like we haven't, and anybody can respond to this too, do you feel like we haven't learned, therefore, how to create some sort of stability? As soon as we recovered from the last recession, everybody just started spending willy-nilly and taking great risks. The gig economy grew more than ever before. Because people or did the gig economy grow like never before because people were anxious to make as many quick dollars as they could, and now now everybody's in a position where Many of these same people are without work. These are, I'm thinking out loud about this stuff. But does this mean that we didn't learn from the last time? What do we think?
Well, I think that a lot of people have learned, but we can't seem to get the leadership to put what the type of world that we want to live into to make it a reality. So many people, want the citizens of the world to all live a decent life, to all have health care, to all have a home, to all, have basic human needs met. I think that we can all agree on that. Yet we don't have the leadership to implement what the citizens want, the citizens of our country, but I think the citizens of the world. In my opinion, it's a failure of leadership. Now, having said that, I don't know what the solution is. It's so complicated. I mean, human nature is so complicated. I will say, though, that people during this epidemic have cared for one another. We shelter in place because if we're a carrier, if we're not sick, but we're possibly a carrier, we don't want to get other people sick. I mean, I've seen so much goodwill, so much caring for our neighbors, and I do believe that component of human nature is the strongest one. Yet, we are subjected to people who are so greedy, who are in positions of leadership, who've got all kinds of crazy deals going on constantly all over the world, that what the normal citizens of the world want doesn't seem to ever be implemented, or if it is, it's briefly. Like, I was fortunate enough to have a childhood right after World War II, during the 50s, which was a very idyllic time. One parent worked. We never locked our doors. People basically had what they needed. I did experience that for a short period of time. But then I believe it was in the 70s where this kind of culture of greed took over again. So I really think that, and I think this has also been, this last period in history, and I know I don't want to get too political, has really shined a light on what's going on in our world politically. And I think that people really have to take seriously their job as citizens and to get the kind of leadership to provide what our aspirations are and what we're capable of as people. And again, having said that, I don't know how to do it. Other than take personal responsibility, to try to implement those things in your own life and in daily living, which I think we're doing right now. You say, did we learn anything? I think that's something we're learning, well, I think it's something we inherently know, but it's something we're doing, is we're taking personal responsibility for ourselves and for our fellow citizens, to end this epidemic. But I guess the takeaway from what I'm trying to say is that we really need leadership, not people who are going to be doing all these deals to make themselves billionaires. Not that I have anything against the billionaire class. I don't. But I think that there has to be fairness. There has to be justice for all people. The billions shouldn't be made on the backs of people, and as a result of stealing or cheating people or denying them basic human rights. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's well put,
yeah,
Mary.
yeah.
And the personal responsibility aspect of it, and and you saying what we're doing right here is an example of
Mhm.
what people can do, I think is pretty key, isn't it?
Yes, I do. I really do think personal responsibility is the only way to do it, because it's so overwhelming, you know? It's
Well,
so overwhelming.
and I feel less overwhelmed getting together with the three of you. And that's
Ah,
why I like doing this, because, by us saying, let's get together and talk about this openly and honestly for all to
mhm,
see and all to hear,
mhm.
we're saying, don't forget you're not alone in this. To the rest of
Yeah.
anybody who might hear this or see this, you're not alone in this. We have anxieties too. I heard a really great thing yesterday in a meeting with some leadership that I'm involved with, and one of the team said, you know, let as a leader, you have to let people know your problems and your faults because you become human, you become accessible. And I think that that's an incredible trend that I'm seeing that I find very promising with the kinds of leaders that we do need, is that they're saying, yeah, I feel just as overwhelmed as you. I feel just as screwed as you. I mean, I don't know what to do, but we got to do something. And the personal responsibility as a citizen to say, I want to do something. Citizen of the world was a perfect terminology. I like that a lot. And I think and I've heard some in mainstream media, just open talk about how that's a part of what's being accomplished right here. And the fault of the governments around the globe dealing with this pandemic is that they didn't recognize that we're all citizens of the same world, that they did not cooperate, did not collaborate, did not represent people as a whole to keep this from spreading more quickly, or to help each other with the resources, etc. And now here we are, So it's for me, it's a same thing without digging into the political well. But a government, a religious institution, any of these sorts of institutions should be of service to the people, never the other way around. When it becomes the other way around, they are failing, and that's we get a lot done as people too. I think there's a whole lot that's changed. Megan, what do you got to say here?
I've been thinking about the 2008 recession, and I had so much more fear back then. I was also only 25 when it happened, but I had just quit a very lucrative but difficult job at an animal hospital, and I was going to be a waitress and pursue my acting career. And then the economy crashed, and I lost my my savings and my market, what is it called? What did I have? Mutual funds?
Yeah, mutual funds, yeah.
Went down the toilet from my grandparents, and I didn't know what to do then. I was just starting out. So right now I feel positive I feel like I have a community around me that I didn't have then. I feel like people in general are so much more generous than they were back then. Just with their time and with their support, with their ingenuity, just the way people are just stepping up and making masks. Like almost everyone I know is making masks on their own for people, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I don't remember seeing anything like that 12 years ago. There was no stepping forward and people saying, what can I do to help you, like there is today. I feel positive that this is a great movement for like Mary was saying, like the people have to take responsibility. I think we are. I think we're making all the right moves, and the leadership needs to follow us because we're doing all the right things and we're showing how the reaction should be and how we should take care of each other. And I think empowering ourselves in that way is going to make a huge change in the way government and society is run, or at least it should. And I hope that it does change things.
100 years ago, I keep going back to 100 years ago. I don't know, maybe it was a past life for me. I don't know. But in 1917, China and Russia both were in the throes of great change. It became modern communist China and then the Soviet Union. But right before they moved into those functions, they had democratic government for a minute. And I won't go into the details as to why that failed, but I'll throw in there that the U.S. didn't help. And you can look at Woodrow Wilson for that and read some books and stuff. But for a minute, China and Russia had democratic elections, and they had the greatest voter turnout still in the history of democratic elections. To this day, nobody has beaten the turnout that early non-czarist pre-Soviet Russia had and that early non-communist post-empire China had. And I don't know, I guess because it didn't go that way, you could say therefore it failed. But if you trust my knowledge of history, I can tell you that it didn't fail for lack of people trying. Uh,
Uh-huh.
it was even 100 years ago, there was a need for the world to function as a society unto itself. Now, more than ever, we have a world that we're all citizens on. You know.
Yeah.
You know, Mary, I'm curious. I feel like in Illinois and Chicago, personally, I think the mayor has been in front of this, and as well as Governor Pritzker. I think
Mhm.
for Illinois and Chicago, I feel like our local leadership has been as strong as it can be in this situation. How do you feel about the local leadership in California or LA where you are?
Yeah, well, quite frankly, my opinion has changed for the better because when I first got here, I went into culture shock. The homeless population is just out of control out here. I mean, there's people living in tents on residential side streets, you know, and under every viaduct. And I was like, why isn't the governor doing something about this? And you know, gas prices are so expensive. The cost of housing is so expensive, you know, and there are movements out here that housing is a human right. And I was like, well, you know, why isn't government acting on this? But now, since this pandemic, Governor Newsom has really done a great job. Like he got us to shelter in place early. Like we've been holding steady, you know, so we're doing fairly well as a state. But I'm more impressed that he's gotten grants to get these hotels, empty hotels, and to turn them into housing for
Amazing.
the homeless. Yeah, so he's taking this opportunity, as tragic as it is, you know, to get the homeless off the streets and to get them into shelter, you know, where they will be safe, and also where the rest of the population will be safe because they were so vulnerable living out on the streets. You know, if there was a COVID outbreak among the homeless, it would be extremely tragic for them and dangerous for everyone. So I've been very impressed about how Governor Newsom has handled this, and he's handled his communication with the Trump administration, you know, in a very positive manner, and gotten very good results. You know, I watch, you know, some of the other governors go on the attack, and you know, I don't doubt that what they're saying, but I wonder if that's the way to get the kind of results that they're looking for. You know, then I see how Governor Newsom handled it so with such diplomacy, and got, you know, it formed a great relationship, you know, with the administration. So I'm
Interesting.
very, yeah, very impressed with the way the governor has handled this situation, and very glad to know, because my family is all in Chicago. You know, very glad to know that you feel that the mayor is doing a great job. I heard that there's is it McCormick Place that's being turned into a hospital?
Yes.
My God, I mean, that terrifies me. You know, all these hospitals, there's been hospitals going up all over the place, and with thousands and thousands of beds, I certainly hope that they're not going to be utilized. I mean, I'm glad that we're prepared. But yeah, my Governor Newsom is on it, and I'm very happy to hear that Mayor Lightfoot is on it as well.
So what we're talking about too is the opportunities that grow out of this.
Mm.
So the opportunity in the case of these politicians to show how things can be accomplished, how things can be partisan politics can be forgotten about. Um, the opportunity
That's such a strong point, Phil. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's such a strong point. Yeah, to, you know, under these tragic circumstances, I'm sorry it had to happen this way, but you know, finally people are working together in a nonpartisan way. You know, most of them, there's still political fighting, but most of them. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, I'm glad you find that a strong point, you know.
Yeah.
What other opportunities do any of you all see with this, or what opportunities personally have you tapped into as a result of this? Either in your work, Chris, as owning two music stores, and I should let people know too that Chris's knowledge of the construct world of construction is not random. She was a union pipe fitter for a long time, and in fact, Chris should have a podcast called "I Know a Guy," because if you need something, man, I'm telling you, it's the bad, you know. So
You know,
you know,
I'll tell you the way, it's unfortunate, but I'm in a lot of webinars with colleagues that own music stores across the country. And, uh, a Guitar Center just laid off 9,000 out of their 11,000 employees,
wow.
or furloughed. I think that means the same
Furlough.
thing.
Oh,
So yeah, it means
Or
they
put
can
them on
hire
hold,
back.
right?
yeah, furloughed is a
Okay.
little better than laid off because
Okay.
you still have a tie with, like, the job will be there when everything starts back up. So
Yeah, well, I
a little
mean,
better.
they've been riddled with bankruptcies and troubles. Music and Arts did the same thing, and we're hearing about, in this music industry, the closures, and I mean, we're the last game in town, and I think it's because we're the only CPS vendor, so we're providing to educators and students that we're down to a one-man shop, but we're still doing curbside pickups. And it's I hate to say it, but there's a benefit to being the only game in town. And so on a very personal micro level, we're seeing our organization and staff kind of rose to the top.
Yeah, I on a personal level for me too, I had just started doing self-taping services for fellow actors, and because of that, I've been trying to like up my own self-tape game and get my own equipment and do all that. And now all of a sudden, that's all we can do is self-tapes. So I've been able to feel very comfortable in this transition. It hasn't been a shock to me to just stay at home and do auditions. I know that's not the case for a lot of actors. So a lot of actors like myself are trying to be a resource for people who want to learn about the self-taping setup, and the community itself is jumping on that. I mean, we have casting directors and schools that are doing free webinars to teach actors about all these resources as well. So I think it's a great time for actors to be able to take charge of their own career. Like I was saying earlier, there's all these open calls that are being done by casting offices that cast NCIS and big films like Wonder Woman, and trying to think of what else, Fleabag in the UK, that great show Fleabag, that casting directors hosting open calls. I mean, there's so many crazy opportunities that are coming out of this for our industry, to have a direct connection to these people that we never ever would have had a direct connection with before. So
Amazing.
it's a very odd benefit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're even thinking now that we were dabbling in virtual lessons anyways before this, but now we've sort of perfected it and worked out all the kinks. And now a teacher, if you don't feel well, then don't come in. Just teach from your home. You have all the equipment. We have a system. Great. Why lose the income? We can set you up. And even reaching out to previous teachers that don't live in Chicago anymore, and have master classes and webinars in this way. Yeah. So that's something that's opened up too, for sure.
Great.
Well, that was one of the things for me too. Was I had already been doing online lessons for students that had moved out of town and wanted to get a brush up here and there. I really especially the kind of teaching that I do, I really like to be in the room with somebody because the subtleties that I depend on that even our wonderful technology doesn't quite give me. Also, if they don't have the best equipment, so I actually contacted Shure Microphones, so I'm doing that shout out to them again to remind them to see
Come
if
on,
they want
sure.
to. Well, yeah, sure. Yay. I um, to see if they wanted to provide work out an affiliate program to provide microphones for my clientele because I'm not an inexpensive music coach, and so to provide people who want to work online, and I've also had people who want to work online just because they don't want to drive in from like Wisconsin, Indiana, or DeKalb or something like that, and so they could get here, but they don't want to spend 3 hours for an hour lesson kind of thing. But it'd be nice to be able to send them, well, here, when you pay your first tuition payment, I'll provide you with a quality microphone and webcam. Although you can't find the most popular webcam in the world anywhere online except Australia right now. The Logitech 920, they've sold out everywhere. I was looking yesterday. But I've been using this.
Phil, I just bought 8 of them 2 weeks ago.
Good.
I was the last one.
Oh,
Chris,
see, that's what it was. That's what happened. Did you pay like fair market price, or were they like $100 a piece or something?
No, they were $70 each.
Yeah, that's what they're going right. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
and I didn't move quick enough. Still got a Logitech, but it was not that one. But yeah, I've taken the opportunity to research things that I didn't give a whole lot of thought to, like live streaming, getting the better quality music performance and that sort of stuff. Turned out I had some of the things I already needed. I just, and then providing the resources. So I've been using the same page that we're broadcasting onto Facebook on right now. I've been pretty much filling it out with anything that filling the page with anything that I can find that's a resource to people. The next thing I'm going to have is all kinds of recommendations for getting a better live stream where you don't have to spend $4,000. I was telling Megan when we were last night we were talking about this. I was like, yeah, so all of a sudden I need this and then I need that and then in order to get this, I need a USB hub, but I need USB-C, and I've got this, so I have to buy. So I've got to spend about $5,000 before I can do a proper live stream. No, that's not the case. I could probably pull it together for a little bit less than that. So it can be really easy when you go down that rabbit hole to get the feeling like you just can't do it, and then you just want to give up. So there's a whole lot of remembering the adage that sometimes good enough is good enough, and
Phil, you're talking about all these sophisticated, complex technology things. I was ready to give up when I couldn't find the microphone.
Right.
I am in awe of technology. I mean, the fact that we're doing this is just wonderful, and that people are able to do this, that democratizes the viewing platforms for artists. But at the same time, I guess I worry, that this is taking the place of human contact. And as you said earlier, being in the room, to feel, you can feel the person you're working with. You can look in their eyes. A lot of psychologists have written articles about the death of empathy because of the internet, because we don't look into each other's eyes, and empathy comes from that bonding through looking into each other's eyes. So the internet is so awesome. I mean, it's really awesome. But at the same time, human interaction it shouldn't fall by the wayside, and I hope it won't. Maybe I'm being an alarmist, but I just hope it won't. And I'm a little resistant to technology, I think, because of that, and also because when I do technology too much, I get eye strain. I get terrible headaches. I don't know how people can stand their computers as long as they do.
Well, Mary, that's us as artists, right? That's our
Yeah,
job to make sure that that human connection continues.
Hmm,
I
yeah,
think that's something artists in particular bring to the table.
for sure.
yes, absolutely. The stories, passing down of information, and the stories, and what Phil said earlier, just even in this podcast, hopefully reaching some people who it means something to say you're not alone. We're all feeling anxiety, and there's so many people out here. Since I've been in California, there's young kids that come out here to be actors, and it's so expensive here that they have a job. Many of them have a job, but they're living in their car, because housing is so expensive out here. And to say to those people, you're not alone, and hang in there. And even in this pandemic, it must be so much harder for them in this pandemic, that you're not alone. And in that sense, the internet is an incredible tool,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, it's
But
as with any tool that we have, we're going to find problems with it. I like
yeah,
flying places, but I'd rather the plane not crash.
Yeah.
yeah,
And so it's but and I feel like every time I get the hang of one piece of technology, they advance it and it becomes
I
like,
know,
I feel
Yeah.
like
I
I want
know.
to I want a written guarantee for the next thing that I buy that they won't make it obsolete in 18 months.
Right.
But I also, that doesn't mean I want to go back to the wax cylinder. I
Yeah,
realize that my car is broken now that we have electric cars that go fast and look nice, because I have a gas combustion engine. And literally in mainstream, like the big automakers, the gas industry, um, and are all saying that by 2030 that will not a gas combustion engine will not be the norm. But I still need to get around, and
uh,
I'm still going to look forward to when the electric car becomes faster, and then they'll figure out what to do about the lithium battery and all the waste and
uh,
everything trouble that comes of mining it, and the resources for that. So it seems like with everything that we move forward with, we run into more problems. But don't forget that pundits were saying in the 1970s, and I was a weird kid, so I was like in the late 70s, I was preteen. Um, I was reading science magazines and stuff, and they were saying when the world population reached 4 or 5 billion, we'd all starve to death. And now we
uh,
have less famine than we've ever had.
yeah,
And it's partly because we have, learned through technological advances, partly, uh, but also human resourcefulness in general. We've learned ways to provide more widely for each other. And when we find problems now, we speak up a lot more quickly. GMO, billions of dollars spent on GMOs, and then everybody just said, nah, I don't want GMOs. So unless you say no GMO on your packaging, I'm not buying your product. And there was
uh,
nothing these huge corporations could do anything to do about it except start responding. And Tyson Chicken went from the epitome of the factory farm, the most heinous way to raise chickens, to now it's like no antibiotics ever, on their packaging.
Right.
So
uh,
people do have a ton more power than they believe, and now
yeah,
more so than ever. The only thing that stopped the strikes in Hong Kong that were going on uh, for almost a year was COVID-19. It was like that because and it was these were started just as student movements for more democracy in protest to a law that they were trying to pass for extradition to mainland China. And even when that was rescinded, they said, "Yeah, but that's not enough because we know you're going to pull something else out of your hat." And they just and all these kids, they'll give up, because mainstream people would be upset with it. And mainstream people started taking to the street. Oh, they'll give up when the economy's getting roughed up in Hong Kong, and the economy got roughed up, and businesses started supporting. So people have a ton of power, and we have right now this amazing opportunity uh, through the widespread communication of that person walking toward me down the street suddenly matters again,
uh,
and then the widespread communication of you are not alone in this, and we've got this, and CBS took my slogan, "We're all in this together," and hashtagged it.
Did.
Yeah, you know.
Well,
You're
one
right. I
donut.
was so glad to see something like that used that I thought was just some hippie slogan I pulled out of my posterior and then using it on mainstream media, you know. But I love it. I think that these are the opportunities that we need to not forget we had. Because I think that human connection, Mary, and that empathy, I'm totally with you on that. It is so difficult. Here we went from, oh, technology is killing empathy, and kids, especially younger generation. I say kids to me is anybody like Megan's age or younger, you know. So I guess that's I'll be 54 next on Easter. Yeah. So, but you know, the loneliness epidemic and all this kind of stuff. All of a sudden, now everybody on the planet is understanding what loneliness really means, what this loneliness epidemic is. It's not just some kind of talk about those kids who won't get off their phones. Now we're all dying to get on our phones and communicate with each other, and get on our computers and communicate with each other. And the empathy is, you know, making its way across the internet through the technology. And as soon as we're allowed out, we're going to be hugging strangers, you know, after we ask them if they got the antibodies, you know, first, you know.
Yeah.
You know, what other, so as three women that I admire, what do you, to wrap this up, tell me, where are we going from here? What do you want the outcome to be, or what do you think the outcome is going to be? What are we going to,
Well, first of all, Phil, I want to say thank you for that. That was just really well put, and it reminded me of something a very, very dear friend of mine said just the other night: is you have to have faith in people. That we're looking at people who are laying down their lives for us right now, you know, to take care of us and to help us. And as you just put so well in what you said, the people do prevail. You said there'll be a loss of empathy, but instead there seems to be a surge in empathy, to use the internet empathetically rather than to allow it to kill empathy. So we have faith in each other, and to know that people are not alone, and to be so deeply grateful for the people who are out there right now in the pandemic, but even, you know, without the pandemic, the police force, the firemen, the doctors, the nurses, there's so many people out there that will lay their life down, the military, for us on a daily basis, you know, to be so grateful. And again, to have faith in each other and to know we're not alone.
right on.
Sweet.
Chris?
You know, Mary, I really think what'll come out of this is that global citizen, you know, term you used. You know, like 9/11, all of us in the States, we all know where we were. You know, our parents all know where they were when Kennedy was shot. You know,
Mm.
this is worldwide. You know, you can travel to any country in 5 years from now and talk about where you were during this time. And this is kind of an anchor point in history globally. And I think that's kind of an interesting point. And, you know, I know for myself, every day I take 1 hour and I catch up with an old friend on the phone. I've been doing that every day. Because I have an extra hour now. And one of my favorite stories out of this is one of my employees, his mom and dad have been living apart for the last couple of years, and mom's moving back home. His brother's moved back home. He's moving back home, and they're getting a dog. He's like, I'm a kid again. This is the best time of my life, you know. And he's got his whole family unit, and they're all watching movies and laughing, and you know. So I guess, you know, if you're in a house with people that you happen to like, you know, you're fortunate, because it is a time to remember why we like each other and why we have the friends we have. And I think the personal relationships that are going to come out of this are going to be what the big stuff is.
Mhm.
And Megan, who I hope likes the people she lives with, how can you wrap it up here?
Oh, wrap it up. Gosh, I don't know. I'm trying to think in the future of what this all is going to turn out to be, and I'm more scared than I would like to admit about how it's going to affect the economy. Like Chris was saying, I don't know if that was before we got on. You know, the 9 months out is when the recession is really going to hit us, and I hope that we all remember this feeling that we have right now when that happens, and that we will still do what we can for each other and band together and get through it together and maintain the empathy that has been so beautiful. It does remind me of when 9/11 happened, and I was in college, and it was like strangers. We had this shared connection. You know, you look at each other, you know exactly what's going on in the world, and you understand what the other person's going through, and that's such a rare interest. I want to say cool, but it's not cool, but it's just fascinating how we cannot know someone and we're going through the same thing. So I really hope that connection that we're all creating right now maintains.
So we'll make T-shirts. Don't forget COVID-19.
Yeah.
You know, so in addition to the antibodies, we will all have who survive, and our hearts, of course, go to anybody who has been lost and to anybody who is struggling with it. And let's hope that common sense continues to prevail and people continue to take care of themselves and other people. One of my biggest concerns with going out before we were shelter in place ordered was Megan will tell you I never get sick. I have like health problems of my own, but I never, like, I got a flu last year and she got mad at me because she's like, you've never gotten the flu in our life. She's like, you never get the flu. What's wrong with you? You know, and you know, so I worry. I'm like, wow, you know, maybe I'm like Typhoid Mary or something. So I don't want to get, you know, somebody sick. And while I was disappointed that my 25th anniversary album release show was canceled 2 days before shelter in place was official, I was also relieved because I didn't want to be responsible for somebody getting sick and, you know,
Right.
dying or even suffering anyway. And having experienced respiratory failure in my life due to asthma, now I have COPD on top of it, it's a pretty frightening prospect. It's a pretty helpless place to be when you cannot get your next breath. And fighting for each one, I don't wish on anybody. So let's continue to take, you know, precautions and use common sense. And back to the Haskell, Kansas flu of 1918 that they keep calling the Spanish flu. It dissipated in the spring and it came back in the fall. So be cautious going in because all viruses tend to go away during warmer weather. So we don't want to get all too excited. Let's all be, you know, be sensible about that. Now, I'm not a medical professional. I don't pretend to be, nor do I play one on television. I am not an economist or a historian. I'm just a songwriter with this podcast, Life, Music, and the Pursuit of Answers, that I would love to thank these amazing women for joining me today, all of whom were on previous episodes. So thanks for coming and celebrating 1 year of me doing this podcast where we do what we just did. Talk openly about the world and try and find something positive amongst all the fertilizer. All right. So everybody out there,
Thank you for hosting, Bill.
Yeah.
Reynard Liss, Chris
Yes.
Bell of Flatts Sharpe Music, Megan Corse, and I will link people to all these folks here, and they'll be in the information, you know, so all the names, so you know who everybody is, etc. The actual episode will be up just in like a day or two here, and it is to be found on 8 different podcast platforms, including Anchor, .fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, I think Apple Podcasts. Anyway, you'll find it. Just look for me and look for them, and we'll see y'all later. I'm going to end the live stream. Thanks for watching Book of Faces Land. Peace. Hold your head up.
Nice.
All right.
Are we?
It's
Oh
great to
my
see your
gosh,
lovely
Phil,
faces.
We're off.
that
We're
was
off.
so that was so lovely, everybody.
Love it.
I'm so proud to have been a part of it.
Yeah.
I've got to run, you guys. I'm so sorry. I've got another meeting that's a little late. So,
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Bye,
All
Megan.
right.
Good to
See you,
see you.
Megan.
see
Good to
you.
see you.
Bye, guys.
Chris, glad to hear you're doing well over there. Say hi to everybody.
We're stable. We're stable. That's all I want to be
Yeah, that's
anymore.
right.
Is
That's right.
stable.
I'm
And
so glad
Mary, a pleasure meeting you too. Yeah, you had some really, that was good food for thought. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure to hear you.
Yeah, I thought that Phil like really put a good collection of different types of personalities together, so that it was thought provoking for everybody. It was thought provoking for me. I was so interested in all your information about business because I ran a business a long time ago. My husband and I had an actors workshop, but since then I've just been independently directing and acting and doing things like that. So I don't know that world, so that was really interesting to me. So it's a pleasure to meet you. I hope to meet you in person sometime, when I'm
I
in
hope
Chicago.
so too. And we can
Yeah.
shake hands and hug and touch.
and
Yeah.
all that stuff
Yes.
not allowed to do right now.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
You
right.
all put yourselves together by being the people that responded when I asked who could do one of these. So
Uh-huh.
Nice.
it was serendipitous. All right.
Yeah.
Well, take care.
All
So,
right, guys,
there.
you too.
Thanks a million. Thanks a million, Phil. You did such a great job.
Did. It was a
Like
good one.
hosting. You're a wonderful host.
Thank you kindly.
All right, bye-bye all.